I feel like A24 could have easily distributed something like this today. Good evening, everyone. My name is Celeste Lacabre. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for your enduring patience. The return of the Vinegar Syndrome reviews is finally upon us. We're going to be going through the May titles today. It is quite a hefty haul collection of films, as it were, and there's a lot to talk about. So hopefully we can get this done in a timely manner. It took me a long time to do this. Lots of stuff going on in my personal life. And just a ton of supplements to get through, booklets to read, etc. So hopefully I can catch up with the months following faster than this, but I'm doing my best, I promise. Hopefully it was worth the wait. So if you're not familiar with this segment, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a short little unboxing of all these titles. I'm going to give a brief, somewhat in-depth spoiler-free review of the actual film, and then I'm going to go through which supplements I think are worth your time and worth watching. And if I think you should get the release or not, because I know that these are expensive, I know that these are not for everyone, and so I want to help you make the most educated decision you possibly can. But before we cut into the heart of the video, kindly indulge me for a brief moment while I tempt you to join my Patreon. Patrons at every level get a shout out in my next video, and patrons at the top 2 tiers get their names in the credits of every video. Patrons at these tiers also receive access to our private Discord community, the Cinematic Catacombs. Additionally, they receive access to at least 3 patron-only videos per month and access to a monthly patron-only livestream. Patrons at the highest level also receive a monthly handcrafted and personalized postcard and access to a downloadable library of my audio commentaries. Furthermore, 10% of pledges at every tier will be donated to a patron-chosen queer charity every month. In addition, patrons at every level are guaranteed access to everlasting life after death. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and start with a little film entitled Night Screams. There's the slip, the little rubber ducky on the back. There's your original poster. It's a 4K, 3-disc set. I guess I'm starting with this one because it was the one I liked the least, so let's go ahead and get that out of the way. This is one I will most likely, well, I definitely will be selling on eBay. It's not that this is necessarily a bad film, it's just that there's not a lot to it. Like, I'm gonna try my best to give it any sort of thoughtful critique or analysis, but there really just isn't much there. It's a perfectly serviceable slasher, I guess, if that's your kind of thing, but it kind of just meanders aimlessly. Like, there's a few creative kills, and there's some fun moments here and there, but overall it's just kind of boring. Like, there's just not much to it, unfortunately. There is a particularly memorable sequence with a grill, which they have immortalized here. So, and then, you know, there's a fun scene with a rubber ducky, which they've immortalized here. But overall, I don't recommend this one. I don't really see a lot here, and I think that you could probably skip this one or probably watch it somewhere first to see if you like it. Maybe give this one a rental, something like that. Yeah, overall I gave this one a 4 out of 10. It's just, honestly, I'm struggling to fill time to say something about it because there's just not much to it. So let's go ahead and move on to the supplements. Now, Vinegar Syndrome has been kind enough to commission one of their famous sort of feature-length documentaries going through the history and making of this film. And again, it's good, but there just isn't a ton to say about it. There was one fun part where, okay, so for this to make sense, you have to know that the producers, so this is like a regional horror film, very, very low budget, and it ended up at a pretty slim, quick runtime at like 70 minutes or something like that, and they were like, nah, it's got to be longer. So the producers insisted that they insert scenes from other horror films that I guess they had the rights to, and then that they also insert scenes from porn films, because there just wasn't enough TNA, I guess. This is to the filmmakers' most grim dismay, and that comes up time and time again when you go through these supplements. They're not stoked about it, but essentially there was a fun anecdote in this documentary where one of the lead actresses happened to see one of the porn stars that was in one of the insert shots at a bar, and she walked up to her and she was like, "Oh, I was in a movie with you, technically." And the girl was just like, "Really?" And she had to like quickly clarify, "Oh, no. They took your scenes and put it in one of my films. I did not have sex with you." And she was like, "Oh, great. More work I didn't get paid for." I thought that was a pretty amusing anecdote. But yeah, I mean, it just kind of adds to how awkward this experience is and how strange the film is, where like you're just inserting Like, you'll have characters watching TV and then you'll spend some time watching what they're watching, and it doesn't really make sense, but it's clearly like a hack job like afterwards. So that's curious, at least. You also get a commentary with the director and cinematographer. This is mainly just the two of them complaining about the inserts because they hated it so much. And when they're not complaining about the inserts, they're actually just audibly surprised at how much they like the film, because they kind of built it up in their minds as being like a piece of shit. But they were just kind of over and over again like, you know, this isn't so bad. Look what we did here. I wish I lighted this better, but it's actually a pretty good scene. I feel bad for them. They just feel done so dirty about the insert shots. So the UHD disc and the first Blu-ray disc are the same, except, you know, in terms of format, they're different. But the second Blu-ray disc is the second cut of the film. Now, this is I don't quite understand why they couldn't just cut the insert shots out of the UHD and do a second version that way. But I'm not a film restoration specialist, so they'd probably know better than me. But it's basically a reconstruction of the original cut as the filmmakers intended it, that never got to be released, where they basically cut out all the insert stuff. There's a 30-second introduction just telling you that at the beginning of it. It's really not worth watching, but you know, I think it comes from a VHS source, so it's rough quality, but it's nice that they did that, and they just went the extra mile to put a whole extra Blu-ray disc in there just so the filmmaker's original vision could finally be honored. Like, that's the kind of thing that Vinegar Syndrome does that I think is just really cool. So unfortunately, I didn't like the film, but I do highly recommend this release if you're a fan of the film. Like, obviously, it's not going to get better than this, so that's that one. Okay, next, let's go for A Blade in the Dark, the Lamberto Bava film that they pulled out all the fucking stops for. There's the Italian kind of reversible version. It is a kind of reversible box because you have the Italian title on the side here, and the Italian artwork here, and then you have the English title here and the English artwork there. This sold a lot of copies really fast because people were pretty enamored by this split case packaging that they did, kind of honoring maybe the most notorious scene in the film. So, I mean, it's pretty cool. It works on the other side too, which is fun. Kind of have the knife coming out and the girl looking scared. And then pull the contents out of the box. You get a nice booklet, some sick cover right there. I'm not sure how much of this I can show. I think I'm good for most of it. Another excellent booklet designed by Haunt Love. Does an amazing job every time. And then you have their signature slipcover in a slip box here with this lovely art. And it's also reversible. So you get all sorts of, maybe I should be censoring that. It's an illustration, like, grow up. All sorts of artwork options on this one. And then I guess I gotta censor it again. There's not really, I wish they had done original poster art. There's gotta be options for that, but it's just, yeah, it's just the two slip artwork options for the actual artwork inside. It's kind of a bummer, but whatever. And it's once again, this is a 4-disc set. So they really, really went all out, not only on the packaging on this, but on the supplements too. So you get 2 UHD discs and 2 Blu-ray discs. The 2 UHD discs, one has the extended director's cut, like the kind of unmessed with, like, full quote-unquote TV cut before they decided it couldn't be a TV movie. And then there's a theatrical cut that's sort of truncated. And then you get the same thing on the Blu-ray, the 2 Blu-ray discs. You also get a feature-length documentary produced by Severin Films called All the Colors of the Giallo, about Giallo films, which is a really nice touch, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So in terms of the film, I had heard this one be pretty hyped up. I have personal friends who are a really big fan of it, and clearly they thought it was worth pulling out all the stops for. So I was like, wow, this is a big title. I'm excited for it. And this one I will be keeping, but I gotta be honest, I was a little bit disappointed by it. I think there are a lot of interesting ideas going on here, and it's a beautiful looking film, and there's some pretty gnarly kill sequences, but it has a twist that I will not spoil, but it's a twist that I've discussed several times on this channel already, and it never stops being annoying and contrived and cliched and problematic. And in this one, I don't think it is done particularly sensitively. It doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a lot of, like, kind of garbage psychobabble at the heart of it. I don't know. It's just derivative, honestly, and not particularly great. So I don't care for that part. But in terms of the film itself, I don't know. Giallo films are ones that are hard for me to get into because I feel like it's a lot of boring detective work kind of broken up by really gnarly murder sequences and lots of pretty colors. you know? And the kind of slow burn mystery aspect of this just doesn't really interest me or really work for me that much. But in this one, it's at least a little bit more interesting because there are some wacky ideas going on here, and I kind of like the conceit of it. Like this kind of, again, here's a film that's doing meta horror before Scream and doesn't get any credit for it, but it essentially follows a film composer who is commissioned to write the score for a horror film that actually opens the film as a scene from the film within the film. It's also a woman director who's doing the film in the film, which is really interesting. Definitely a purposeful choice and a really unexpected one, especially, I mean, Kat Ellinger talks about this in the commentary, but there just weren't really women directors working in Italy on these genres at the time. So that's an interesting choice. So yeah, you just kind of have a lot of, it would get into spoilers to talk about a few instances of this, but it really kind of gets at the heart of violence in cinema, what that can do to people, what, like the exploitation of filming these things and sourcing these things from real life. There's definitely interesting ideas going on in this film. It's just unfortunately a little bit of a slog a lot of the time for me. It is very visually creative and visually stunning a lot of the time as well. So overall, I do recommend it and I do like it. And for the film itself, I give it a 6 out of 10. Now for the supplements, there is first a Kat Ellinger commentary, which I think is just excellent, as they always are. She just makes these things fly by, and she has this unique talent to just not stop talking for the entire duration of the film. She never runs out of things to talk about or tangents to go on or interesting things to add. It's really quite admirable. Like I have not tried my hand at an audio commentary yet, but I don't know that I could do it as well as she does it. Yeah, just a lot of information packed in there, and she clearly loves this film a lot, and like the enthusiasm shows quite clearly in her commentary. There's another commentary with the Hysteria Continues podcast. I'm going to try to say this as diplomatically as possible because I do not hate this podcast and I have nothing against the people who run it, but I've tried listening to their commentaries more than once now, and I just don't get anything out of them. Maybe it's because I'm not a listener of their show, and maybe I should try to listen to some episodes and see if that helps. But for whatever reason, their style just doesn't click with me. So I don't know how many, because they keep commissioning commentaries from them, and I'm not sure how many more of them I'm gonna try to listen to, honestly. I think it's just not something that's for me. But if you're a fan of the podcast, I'm sure you'll get something out of it. Okay, so next, the All the Colors of the Giallo feature-length documentary. Now, you can buy this separately from Severin. They have it out on Blu-ray, and the documentary has a commentary from Kat Ellinger on it, which is not on this disc. So you will have to get that separately if you want that. But it is really cool that that's just kind of on there. And it's interesting that Severin, I guess, licensed it out. Overall, I think it's a pretty good like primer on the genre. Like if you don't know anything about it, or honestly, if you do know a few things about it, as I feel that I do, you'll get something out of it and you'll learn something. Definitely like a talking heads type documentary with some archival interviews and such spliced in, but it's like really, really well edited, which I appreciated, and it is very informative. It ends kind of really abruptly, which is kind of funny. I was just kind of like, oh, that's it? Okay. But overall, I did enjoy that film, and I think it definitely adds quite a bit of value to the release, as you're essentially getting an entire bonus film on it. Next, there's an interview with the director, Lamberto Bava, who is Mario Bava's son, if you didn't know. His interview was really just excellent, informative, and entertaining. I highly recommend giving that one a watch if you have the release. And then there's a Sam Deegan video essay. She is amazing as always. I always look forward to her contributions the most on a release. She does a really great analysis on Bava's films and the aesthetics therein. And she kind of specifically ties it to how they relate to Gothic horror or the Gothic tradition in general. As that's a genre, style, aesthetic that goes back quite some time. And she really does a great job contextualizing his work in that larger genre project. And then finally, the booklet has 3 different essays in it, and I think they're all worth reading. Alexandra Hiller-Nicholas, of course, always does a great job, and she's included in this. I do think it's interesting that all 3 essay writers here are women. Perhaps a purposeful sort of counterbalance to the grotesque violence against women included in the film, which, you know, if you've watched this channel, you know that I don't necessarily think is a bad thing to create, enjoy, or analyze, but I do think that things like this are pretty much necessary to kind of counterbalance what has been a pretty long tradition of male directors and writers kind of profiting off of really grotesque violence against women. And to have like a female perspective analyzing these things, I think is super valuable. So props to Vinegar Syndrome for doing that. And if you don't read the booklets, you should. And this one's worth reading. I realized my acacia strain flag was down, so I went ahead and fixed that. So yeah, although I wasn't like the biggest fan of the film, I'm keeping the release and I do recommend it, especially if you're a fan of giallo films, and especially if you're a fan of this film in particular. Like, they knocked it out of the park. Okay, next up we have The Villages of the Damned, 3 Horrors from Spain box set with his excellent artwork. Great spine, more great artwork, very cool slip artwork. Yeah, we got cats. This one does have reversible art, which is nice. And it's a 2-disc set. And then you have this lovely booklet. So this is sold out, and I'm not actually sure if the standard edition comes with the booklet, and I don't think it does, and that's super unfortunate because these essays are just truly excellent. We'll talk about those when we get to them. In terms of the films, it includes El Bosque del Lobo from 1970. That translates to The Forest of the Wolf. It has Las Flores del Vicio, or The Sky is Falling. It's also called Bloodbath, depending on where you look. It's kind of all over the place. That one's from 1975. And then BEATRIZ from 1976. So let's kind of talk about these films in order, I guess. The Forest of the Wolf, El Bosque del Lobo, is certainly the one to hook you in and the one you buy the box set for in terms of like the acclaim and the popularity of the film. But I gotta be honest, I was a little bit let down by this one. I think off of the heels of that Taboada set, I was just so excited for this. And I guess they're not actually that similar, but like they're definitely constructed similarly, and it's kind of the same idea. 3 Spanish language films, 3 foreign films, artsy kind of films from Vinegar Syndrome. They're very, very different. And I mean, they are Mexican and Spanish films, so quite a bit of difference there. But in terms of this film, it is like glacially slow, and it kind of follows this man who is killing people, and it is unclear to him, to the villagers, and to us as the audience whether or not he's doing this because he's a werewolf. Certainly some interesting ideas here, and certainly some really, really beautiful cinematography, but I don't know, overall it is just pretty dull. And I don't know that I'm sold on it as an amazing film like other people seem to be, but I do like it. It definitely has this like atmosphere of dread to it, and it has this kind of interesting idea of like the idea of how people behave when panic sets in a community. This kind of idea of mental illness versus like supernatural like affliction, I guess. I don't know, there's stuff there to dig into, and there's some pretty memorable sequences in it, and again, some really beautiful locations and cinematography, but I think just overall it really suffers from pacing issues, and it's one that I'll likely revisit, but maybe not as soon. Next we have The Sky is Falling, or Bloodbath as it's sometimes called. This is a weird, fucked up movie. I think this is the one that people have been the least stoked about, that have been like, what the fuck was that? That was terrible. I don't know that I think it's terrible. In fact, I don't think it's terrible, but it is a rough watch in a lot of ways. One, the content is really, really tough to stomach and sit through. There's some real animal violence in this. Like there's chickens that are slaughtered on screen, which I'm not a fan of, obviously. This stars Dennis Hopper, and he's really great and interesting in it, but there's a scene early on where he is just berating a black woman and like humiliating her and like singing a horrifically racist song at her and just peppering her with slurs and all this other awful stuff. It's not entirely clear what purpose it serves in the film, and it's a pretty extended sequence, and it's a pretty early sequence, and it's just really rough to sit through. I believe this was also the height of Dennis Hopper's like kind of heroin addiction, and I'm 95% sure that when you see him shoot up in the film, he's doing it for real. Like they're actually just filming him doing that. So yeah, I guess there's a bunch of trigger warnings out of the way because this is a rough film, but in terms of not just the content, like it also doesn't make a ton of sense. Like it's very, very challenging in its structure and in its plot. It's a hard film to follow. There's a lot of weird stuff going on. There's like 5 different storylines that kind of connect and kind of don't. There's a lot of characters to keep up with, a lot of weird shit going on. It is really just a challenging watch. But by the time it was over, I did have a sense that I've never seen anything like that before, which is something that I definitely respect and I definitely think about. It's one that stayed with me when it was done. And it might be one that rewards subsequent viewings. I've seen other people be like, no, this is just stupid, like faux artsy trash. It doesn't make any sense. But I do think there's something there. And if any of that sounds intriguing to you, I would say give it a shot. Okay, and then the last film is BEATRIZ. Now to me, this is very clearly like the best film of the set, and the one that I think makes the box set worth getting. This film is really just it's so dark, and it's so beautiful, and it's so thematically interesting and disturbing, and like just really visually striking. There's just so much going on here, and I really, really like this one. I don't know if I gave my ratings for the first two yet, but The Force of the Wolf I'd give a 6, and Bloodbath I'd also give a 6. Essentially, it's about a little boy who sees a friar get like jumped and attacked in the woods, and then he kind of just busts out some like boss ass shit and like takes out all the attackers at once. And then the friar kind of ends up in the boy's community, and it becomes unclear if he's like a portent of evil or like some kind of sinister force. And then the titular character BEATRIZ kind of falls ill, and it's unclear if it's through supernatural forces or what. This image here comes from the film. This is one of the, I believe, the opening shot. And then also this image comes from this film as well. I don't know. They seem to know how good the imagery is and like utilizing it for the box set release, even though it's not like the selling point of the box set. But for me, it really it is. Like, I think this film is really just something special. Like, folk horror is absolutely just my jam personally, but it also just has such interesting themes regarding like the arrival of religious figures in like Catholic Spain, and kind of the moral ambiguity of something like that. Sinister things lurking where they should be pious or holy, you know? There's also a pretty extended sequence towards the end that involves those masks that are on the slipcover that is just really haunting and striking and just extremely disturbing. It's a pretty extended rape sequence, and yeah, it's a lot to take in, to handle at once. But yeah, I love the locations in this too, like these kind of authentic Spanish villages, all this creepy imagery to go with it. Just, I can't say enough good things about it, so I think I gave that one a 7 out of 10. Might be closer to an 8, I'm not sure, but it's a really excellent film that I highly recommend. Moving on to the supplements, most of them are centered around El Bosque de Lobo. There's an interview with the director, and then there's an introduction before like some kind of film festival where a round table of people just sort of discuss how much they think it rules. There is a interview with one of the Yvonne Sentis, one of the actresses in Las Flores del Vicio. She basically says that she doesn't think the film is good, and that it doesn't make sense, and that it's just kind of a weird one that she's not super into, which is funny, but she kind of goes into her career at large. And then there's an interview with Jose Lefante, one of the actors in BEATRIZ, and his interview is really interesting. He gives some pretty unique insights into the into his own career, and then into the kind of behind the scenes of the making of the film. But the real gem here is this booklet, I think. There is a essay by my personal friend and patron of this channel, Erica Schultz from the Unsung Horrors podcast. Maybe I'm biased, but she gives just such an excellent, or she does such an excellent fucking essay in this about the history of werewolves in culture, in folklore, and in cinema. There's stuff in there that I didn't know before reading the essay, and it's clear she did her research and really contextualized this element of our culture for this film specifically. It's the werewolf one, obviously, but aside from a great analysis, it's just like a great historical piece too. So Erica, if you're watching, really just an amazing essay. And then Alexandra Heller Nicholas does an essay kind of analyzing the aesthetic beauty of BEATRIZ. She kind of goes into like how it plays upon your own like tactile senses, like how it plays upon not only just visuals, but sound and touch. And it's just really beautiful writing and really insightful analysis to it. Just two excellent essays that I absolutely think is worth tracking down the limited edition if it's not included in the standard, and are just really worth reading in general. Like I said it already, but read the essays, read the booklets, they're great. So overall, this is a release that I recommend, maybe with a few caveats. Like if I was talking about this and the whole time you were like, oh, this sounds sick, you probably will like it a lot. But if you were kind of like, doesn't sound like my kind of thing, maybe give it a try through streaming or something first, but I think it's pretty affordable for 3 films. So yeah, short of showing you the films myself, I've done my best to give you an idea as to what they're like and if it'll be something that you would enjoy. So yeah. Okay, next let's talk about from director Uli Lamel, The Boogeyman. Now this is one, first of all, very strong candidate for artwork of the year right here. It goes well with the Devonsville Terror one, but this artwork is even better. Like, it's so fucking sick. This is one that I'm going to do my best to go through quickly, but you get original art, which is sick. But this thing, man, it is just so fucking loaded up with supplements, and I did watch all of them, so I'm gonna do my best to go through it in a timely manner. You get the 4K and the Blu-ray disc. As you can see from the lighting in my room, we're definitely on point here with my aesthetic. So the film itself, I believe this is the director's most famous film, so there might be a good chance that you've seen it already. But essentially, this is a film about 2 children who are kind of sexually and physically abused by their mother and her lover, I guess. There's a really disturbing scene early on that might be uncomfortable for some people, where the child is essentially like tied down to the bed and like teased with a knife because he like interrupted intercourse between the 2 of them. It's a very rough scene, very bizarre stuff going on there. But essentially the boy kills the lover, and then the mirror that was present at the scene of the crime, if you will, kind of contains the man's spirit and haunts them years later. It's a really, really fascinating and well-made and compelling film. I know that a lot of people don't like it. Like, it doesn't have the best rating on Letterboxd or IMDb or whatever, which I found confusing because I think it is a genuinely really interesting and compelling and disturbing film with like a very kind of unique, beautiful aesthetic to it. There's a lot of great practical effects here, a lot of really inventive kill sequences, and a lot of really cool supernatural stuff going on, and just some beautiful locations and cinematography as well. The acting is quite good too. Like, really, I think that this is like a film that just horror fans in general could probably appreciate. Like, I don't think you have to be too into this stuff to get something out of it. Like, I think that if you like the Amityville Horror or something like that, you'll probably get something out of this film. So overall, I really do enjoy this. I think it has a lot of really unique ideas and memorable images and just a lot going for it. I think I gave this one a 7 out of 10, but I think it's worth picking up and owning if this is your kind of thing. If like supernatural horror films are your kind of jam. You know, I feel like today we're having this conversation about how every single horror film is about trauma, like especially these sort of elevated A24 horror films. This feels like it's in that tradition. Like, this feels like it precedes that. I feel like A24 could have easily distributed something like this today, where like the whole thing is kind of a metaphor for trauma, you know? And the trauma is kind of personified or supernaturalified, if you will. And made manifest through these horrible paranormal events, you know? Let's go through the supplements now. So the first one is an interview with the actress Susanna Love, who was married to Uli Lamel and stars in a lot of his films when they were together. This is easily the most manic, frenetic, all over the place, batshit insane interview I've ever seen on any of these releases. I really do not envy the person who had to do the subtitles, because it just is constant and all over the place. She just relays so many insane stories at such a rapid pace. It's kind of hard to take it in. Like, let me give you a couple highlights. At one point she says that she just decided to be a heroin addict one day, and then 6 months later she just decided she didn't want to do it anymore because, quote, she didn't want to be a junkie, and then just quit cold turkey, and then that was that. There's also an anecdote that she gives where Uli apparently like beat the shit out of her, and she like is laughing as she tells this story, and like she kind of tells how she got one over on him in the end. But like, I had to rewind it because Avery was sitting with me too, and she was like, is she talking about the director beating her? And I was like, I think so, but it's so crazy, and the tone doesn't shift. Like, it's just rapid fire, like one take kind of insanity coming out of her mouth that like I had to do a double take and rewind it to make sure I understood that correctly. But that's apparently what happened, which is interesting because he made some feminist films. It's unfortunate that she kind of relays this as like a funny anecdote. It makes you wonder about the type of things that people got away with years and years ago, when this is the sort of thing that can just be relegated to an amusing anecdote and not like an article with like allegations and stuff, you know? Next is an interview with the cinematographer, David Sperling. This is a really fascinating, in-depth, and informative interview that kind of really goes into the nitty-gritty of low-budget filmmaking, and especially how you craft practical effects on a budget like that. Like, he kind of really gives you a peek beyond the curtain. He's not really hiding anything or holding anything back. He's very detailed in his recounting of how these practical effects were achieved. And my favorite anecdote from that is how they, one day for, I believe it was the dolly shot that goes through the church towards the beginning, they straight up like borrowed the assistant director's wheelchair and then just completely destroyed it doing that shot. Sorts of things you got to do right. Next was a pretty interesting little interview with Catherine Tambini, I think is how you pronounce it. There's a scene in the film where she kind of just seduces the mute son character. It kind of comes out of nowhere and doesn't really fit, but it makes sense because she says that this was like a filler scene to kind of pad the runtime. And this was just like she was on set for one day to do this scene. She says that she became good friends with Suki, who is the person from the first interview, the wife of Uli Lamel, who apparently started breeding cats at one point. Like, the anecdotes about and from this person just don't let up. And then Catherine herself actually started making documentary films and now teaches filmmaking at NYU, and apparently gets a kick out of showing this scene to her students, and sometimes gets recognized. And, you know, it's interesting how like a lot of these art house people and higher brow filmmakers and prestigious professors and stuff get their start in genre films, you know? The next is an interview with the editor. His name is Terrell Tannen. He talks about how he essentially did this whole film for free because he just wanted experience editing films. And Uli Lamel said, sure, you can do it. It's just, I won't pay you. So he was like, all right. He says that the initial cut was only 56 minutes long. So they had to kind of go back and cut together some second unit footage, like the aforementioned scene in the barn, and then everything with the psychiatrist was actually done at the last minute and added post initial cut, I guess. So between these two things, they managed to kind of hobble together a feature-length film. Maybe some people, when they watch this, that's maybe the problem they have with it, is this kind of bizarre pacing and how it doesn't seem like one cohesive idea, and that might go to show why. I don't know, I kind of rolled with it, but that was all really interesting. There's a archival interview with the director who has since passed, so they couldn't get a new one with him, but he just has a really relaxing, soft-spoken voice. It was a little bit difficult watching this, knowing what I knew about him now, about how he used to beat his wife. I guess putting that aside, he had a really interesting interview where he kind of relates his interpretation of the film's themes, which I appreciated. He seems to do that for all these interviews. He did that for Devonsville Terror. He's pretty open about the thematic underpinnings of his films. He talks about like his experience making the film, how successful it was upon release, and he talks about making the sequels as well, and just his general philosophy on filmmaking. It's a pretty in-depth, expansive interview. Definitely worth watching. And then there's a commentary with the editor, Terrell Tannen. He gives a lot of the same info that is present on the interviews, but he has good anecdotes and some, you know, compelling comments on independent filmmaking. And Brad Henderson does a good job moderating the commentary, which, quick plug, but I did an interview with him on this channel not too long ago, so you can check that out. And then finally, there is a commentary with the great Kat Ellinger. This is just such an amazing commentary. Like, she does such a great, like, historical overview of the filmmaking and of its place in the genre, and just also analyzing its themes and its style. Just kind of this two-in-one, like, historical context and, like, subjective analysis going on. I'm not sure how she does it all at once, but it is really just something to behold. It's just so incredibly... She's just so incredibly knowledgeable, and like she doesn't waste a single second on this commentary. Like, I'm once again kind of blown away at how she like doesn't even seem to take a breath. Like, it's just no breaks on the commentary train here, you know? Yeah, I watched that and I was kind of just like, that kind of just synthesized everything that I had just spent a long time watching into one concise commentary. So if you find yourself only wanting to watch one of these supplements, make it this one. So there you have it. That is The Boogeyman, a release that I highly recommend. I think the slipcover is sold out at this point, but regardless, you should get this release. We got one left. This was a big month, and it's going to be a fairly long video, so let's see. This is another one that is just absolutely stacked with supplements, and I think I'll have a lot to say about. So this is Undefeatable, starring the great Cynthia Rothrock. There's the back artwork. No original art on this, which is unfortunate, but you do get a booklet in this, which is really cool, and it's a 3-disc set. 2 cuts of the film, the American and international cut, which are wildly different, and then tons of contextual and newly commissioned supplements. Okay, so what to say about Undefeatable? Apparently, the final scene from this film went viral online, and I did since track down the YouTube video and check that out. It's just the final fight scene. I had never seen it before, so I wasn't really aware of it, but apparently a lot of people were like, oh shit, it's that one. And it is quite the scene indeed. What to say about Undefeatable? So the film is, I think, in a lot of ways objectively terrible, but it is also so unique and so insane and so entirely unhinged that it's also just so endlessly entertaining that it becomes something that I just kind of wholeheartedly love and did not get tired of in my kind of rewatches and going through the numerous supplements and everything. I just fell in love with this film. It is a kind of ridiculous martial arts film / exploitation horror film at the same time. Like it just wildly oscillates between like a fun, campy martial arts action film and a kind of genuinely disturbing, fucked up, campy, sadistic horror film. Like it's really all over the place. Aside from one sexual assault scene that is not fun, the rest of the film is pretty fun. And the gore is really kind of shocking at some points, and the performances are just really, like, you need to see it to believe it. The martial arts choreography is just fantastic, as it kind of always is in films like this. Apparently Godfrey Ho was kind of known for doing like low-key extra footage and then like hacking together a second feature out of all the principal photography without anybody else's knowledge, and then just kind of cranking out a secret bonus film without really crediting anyone or telling them about it, which is certainly questionable, but you know, kind of a Jess Franco school of filmmaking, I guess. Overall, like the acting is pretty rough for a lot of these actors, but again, the choreography is astounding, and the film is just so much fun that it's one that I highly recommend, and I think I ended up giving this one an 8 out of 10. So let's kind of run through these supplements the best I can here. The first is an interview with the director, Godfrey Ho. It's a pretty quick and informative overview of his career, kind of going into how he decided to make this film. The main takeaway I got from this is that he definitely seems to think of filmmaking as a job that is just a lot of fun for him, as opposed to like an art form or something coming from genuine creative expression. I think he says as much. Like he's like, this isn't like that serious to me. Like I do this because it's a fun job and I think I'm good at it and I'm efficient, you know, making 2 films out of a very low budget, that kind of thing. Next is an interview with the cinematographer, Phil Cook. He kind of talks about being, other than Cynthia Rothrock, the only American on set, and how it was difficult kind of relaying his ideas with such a language barrier there. He was apparently hired by Godfrey Ho because I think he saw this as his opportunity to make a more serious film, or a more prestigious looking or serious looking film. Stylized and professional, I think, are the words he used. So he was brought in to kind of make that happen. And he kind of talks about how amazed he was at all the stunts going on as well. Next is an interview with Cynthia Rothrock. So first of all, her hair is so great. It looks so amazing. She looks so fucking good. So I just had to get that out there first. Her and Godfrey Ho did 2 films together back to back, and apparently the first one, I don't remember what it's called, is a lot shittier, and maybe Vinegar Syndrome will bless us with that one too at some point, probably more of a VSA type joint. But I guess she confused the 2 for a long time, because she says that this was kind of like a black stain on her career for a long time and she hated it, but upon rewatching it, she found that she actually like really loved it and thought it was a lot of fun and not nearly as bad as she was remembering, and she thinks she might have been kind of confusing it with that other film this whole time, which is perhaps understandable if not unfortunate. Next is an interview with Don Neum, who plays the villain in this film, in that kind of famously campy and over the top, eye bulging kind of performance. He was a personal trainer at the time and now currently works full-time as a personal trainer. He seems to really enjoy like showing people scenes from the film. Like he doesn't seem embarrassed or like, I guess, ashamed of his performance or the kind of legend surrounding it or the kind of fun that people have with it watching it. He says that since he's gotten older, he's glad that the clip of the film went viral and he was really happy to have done it, and he doesn't seem to have any regrets about like the style of his performance or having done it in the first place. I think he understands that like he did the assignment like he did what the director asked him to, and it was a fun and memorable performance that people like, and like it doesn't matter that it wasn't like quote unquote serious or prestigious or anything like that. Like he knows what it was and he's proud of it, and I found that really respectable. Next is an interview with the actress and assistant director Donna Jason. She apparently made so many suggestions to the director during the creation of the film in terms of like giving him notes on the script and his direction that she actually like legally had to be credited as an assistant director at a certain point. And I think she kind of realized that like she had more to bring to the table than just acting, and that she had a lot to contribute on like the actual like writing front. And so she decided to become a screenwriter after that. She relayed a pretty amusing anecdote that in these kind of low budget martial arts affairs, like they spend so much time on the actual fight sequences and you get so many takes for each individual like sequence and move and everything. But when it comes to the scenes where you're just acting, like the dialogue scenes and the scenes that move the plot forward and things like that, typically you get a single take for that, and that might explain some of the rougher acting. Next is a video essay from Sam and Charles from the Twitch the Death Nerve podcast, kind of doing a career overview for Cynthia Rothrock. It's definitely like a piece made by big fans of her work, but it is super contextual and informative as a historical overview, and just as and it's also just really endearing as like an appreciation. She was a like legitimate martial arts expert of like several different disciplines, and especially as a woman, like they go into how like difficult and unique it was for her to break in the way that she did in both the martial arts and the filmmaking worlds. Yeah, she's just a legit fucking badass, and they do a great job outlining why. Also, the very end of it is just so cute. I won't spoil it, but you should watch it. Next is a video essay from Chris O'Neill, kind of outlining the differences between the two cuts. The American Undefeatable cut and then the international Killer Mary cut is what it was called. Essentially, Godfrey Ho added an entire subplot with like a Chinese actor and character, and like it has nothing really, it has very little to do with the original plot from what I remember, but there is some kind of tangential relation between the two. Really is just to make it appeal more to international audiences, and Godfrey Ho casts himself in this version. But essentially the international cut, 27 scenes are deleted and 33 minutes of footage are cut from this to create this new cut, which I thought was really interesting. The way that it goes through the differences is just so pleasing to my brain. Like he really goes down the list of every single difference, and like there's a split screen compare contrast kind of deal going on as the film progresses, or like cutting to each part in sequential order. It's a really, really well done and comprehensive comparison of the two cuts. And then finally, there is an audio commentary on, quick correction, the Bloody Mary Killer cut, which is the international cut, from Brandon Bentley. Now, I tried to find more on him because this commentary was one of the best I've ever heard, and it was just so deeply informative while also being like highly fun and personable and entertaining and funny. I really could only find his name as it was attached to other martial arts commentaries. Like he was on the Bruce Lee Criterion set, but I have no idea who he is, like if he's a professor or just like a content creator or a writer or what. Like I couldn't find anything. If any of you know, let me know, because I really liked his stuff and I was curious how he kind of like where he started to get the job, because he's clearly very good at this, but I was just unable to parse out any origin story, as it were. But yeah, he kind of does commentary in the way that I feel like I would do it if I were to do something like this. Like it's very kind of casual and conversational, and like lots of personal anecdotes and like silly jokes kind of thrown in, but also the level of knowledge that he brings to the table is just insane. Like he was talking about a restaurant that one of the like side characters had opened up that was open today, and I forget, I think it was in DC, he said it was, And I think he lives in DC. And so he was like, I've been meaning to check it out, but I haven't done it yet. And so I was like, oh, the next time I'm in DC, that would be cool to like go to a restaurant owned by one of the extras in Undefeatable. And so I looked up the restaurant and I like looked at their menu to see if I could eat anything there. But I couldn't find anything saying that this was the owner. And I straight up don't know how he got that information, but it is just like ridiculous, the level of insight and knowledge that he has. He also ends the commentary with a really great impression of the one-liners from the end of the infamous scene, which I found highly entertaining. So yeah, I really highly recommend that commentary for sure. There's also audio commentary on the original cut from Cynthia Rothrock. I didn't watch the whole thing. I kind of skipped around. It kind of repeats a lot of the information that is present in the numerous interviews here, but for Cynthia Rothrock super fans, like, it's definitely worth a watch. And if you don't feel like going through all the interviews and you just want to hang out with Cynthia for a bit, that's a good way as any to do that. So, and then finally, the booklet has an essay from Danielle Burgos. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sorry. It kind of analyzes Godfrey Ho and Cynthia Rothrock as kind of outsiders to the genre and to what they're doing. It's pretty brief and it's pretty informative, so I think it's worth a read, as always. Another thing worth mentioning is that Godfrey Ho got his start working for Shaw Brothers. After like an hour plus of recording this, I'm one, hearing my voice go, but two, realize how often I'm saying the word interesting trying to get around it, because like, I'm talking about it, I'm making a video about it, of course it's interesting. It's stupid. Okay, so that's the Vinegar Syndrome reviews for this time. I know that I'm like insanely late on this, but I've actually watched all of the films for next month's slate. I just need to go through the supplements, and I'm actually mostly caught up with August titles as well. So, you know, we're getting there, and hopefully I can crank these out a little bit faster. I think I just kind of got stuck on the enormity of this project, and this month in particular was just a lot all at once, and I've kind of took a break too, but you know, it is what it is. We'll be back on the VS train, as it were. Anyway, I really hope you got something out of this. If you'd like to support this venture monetarily, there are links in the description for my Patreon channel membership and Amazon wishlist. If you'd like to support it non-monetarily, there are links in the description for my Instagram, TikTok, and Letterboxd accounts. And liking the video, leaving me thoughtful comments, and subscribing to the channel help a great deal as well. Yeah, let me know if you've seen any of these films, or if you decided to purchase any of these films, and that'll be that. Thank you so much for watching, and remember that Satan loves all of their children. Bye. I'd like to take a moment to thank our newest patron, the Boogeyman's Closet. I'd also like to thank our accomplices, Anthony Listro, Deanna Vave, Dustin Putman, Enrique Bernal, George Strang, Nosferatu 1334, and Ronnie. If you'd like to be counted amongst their ranks, the link is in the description.